Mic check, 1, 2, what is this? The JBP ain't none of Maul's business. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I am Augustine Versace, this is Onell Media, and you are awesome. As usual, I am on the road to 1K subscribers, so please, if you are here, you are the fam, give me that. Go ahead, like, subscribe, ring that bell notification so you can be back here every time I shoot and drop another video. Now, if there are 3 things in this world that your boy Augustine Versace loves, it is family. My mother, my father, my sister's cousins, close friends are included in that. The second thing would be meatloaf, the greatest thing ever created. I'm talking about fresh out of the oven, sliced thinly with my secret sauce, toasted to perfection on the outer shell of that. And the third thing is the JBP or Joe Budden podcast, also known as I'll name this podcast later. But recently, there's been a lot of turmoil going on, and honestly, I'm going to keep it 100. I am a Joe Budden fan and not a podcast fan. I am an actual Joe Budden music fan that was transferred over to the podcast. So I feel a certain way about Joe Budden. Now, if you were a Joe Budden fan of his music, you give Joe Budden all types of crazy passes because Joe was always the internet guy. He was always on the internet doing something, usually with a beautiful woman or dealing with music. He even harkens back to him talking about a top 50 list, and when he went crazy and said, you guys actually put Method Man over me, Method Man can't do nothing with me, and then Raekwon Bodyguard tapped up his jaw a little bit, you feel me? But Joe Budden has a strong fan base. That is what I'm trying to get to. I am one of those people that are part of that strong fan base, and right now, Joe is under fire with his fan base because there are 2 gentlemen that I've been riding with Joe Budden for a very, very long time on his podcast. They are his co-hosts, or at this point, they were his co-hosts, Rory and Maul. Now, lately to us, the viewer, there has been issues with the JBP boys. But we've come to find out on this last episode of the JBP that there has been problems brewing for quite a bit now. Now, I'm going to give you a short synopsis, let you know what's going on, and get you up to speed so we can go forward with what needs to be said. If you're still here, man, like it. You love me. Like the video. Okay, quick synopsis, all right? This is how it's been broken down, what I could piece together from what everybody has been saying, okay? So, at some point in time, nobody was getting paid for doing a Joe Budden podcast. Then money started coming in. There was a Spotify deal. Now, with the Spotify deal, Joe Budden was at, where was he? Everyday Struggle. And he was trying to see where the payment was coming from. And he did some finessing and finagling, found out what they were getting paid for ads, and found out that, hey, I'm not getting a cut of this. I would like a cut of that. And that led to Joe Budden not re-ing up when his contract was over, when he was doing Everyday Struggle. Now, fast forward, this is what he has been teaching and preaching to his guys. So at some point, Rory decided, like, hey, there's money coming in. I want to see the advertisement money. I want to see what the splits are. I want some equity. All the things that Joe Budden has been preaching that creatives should have. And that's a tricky thing, him deciding what creatives should have, or him feeling what creatives should have entitlement to when it comes to deals with these bigger companies. And just remember that. I'm going to come back to it in a second. So, there seems to be a little beef between Rory and Joe brewing, and it's starting to affect the podcast. According to Joe, it's been years. Like, that Spotify deal being turned down was like 2 years ago or something like that. Like, it's years at this point that Rory is becoming more and more disgruntled. It's a strain on their relationship. It's a strain on the podcast itself. So, with that being said, we're going to fast forward and come right back into what's going on right now, which is Rory keeps inviting Joe to his hands, bro. I'm talking about Rory is talking about these fucking hands is ready for everybody. I'm talking about he's ready to put the thumpers on your boy Joe Budden. Now, I come back to saying I am a Joe Budden fan, but I have grown to love Rory and Mal. They are amazing on the show for what they are. But we're not going to sit here and fake like Rory and Mal are bosses. Joe is the boss, and he hired his friends to come kick it with him, and they can get paid. That is what happened. Joe Budden let Rory get the accounting information. After he got the accounting information, which he had become so disgruntled that, you know, him and Joe had been going back and forth, and he kept inviting Joe to his hands. So Joe said, you know, maybe you need to cool down and chill out. Now, to us on the outside, me personally, I was with Mal, because on the outside, at that point, we hadn't known that this was something that was going back and forth with Joe and Rory for quite a bit of time. Now, if I'm your homeboy and I give you the numbers and you still tell me after I feel like, not even I feel like, according to Joe, those numbers show that Rory and Mal were being overpaid. I show you the numbers and the numbers say you are being overpaid. And then you tell me I want to audit the books. Now, see, that's when I would have had a problem, because, one, remember when I told you guys Joe felt a certain way about creators being properly compensated by the bigger companies, and he said he would never do that. And people are saying Joe is acting like the bigger companies, but in Joe's mind, he explained how the Joe Budden podcast came to be. It was a thought of his, him alone. And he came up with the idea for the podcast once he learned what podcasting was. So with that being said, Mal was living with Joe, and he didn't come along until like episode 7 or 8. Rory didn't show up until like, I don't know, episode 20 or so. And these were people that were added to the podcast after it had already been a thing, after it had already been created, after it was already Joe Budden's intellectual property. That is the word we want to play into, because Joe feels like there needs to be a transparency from the parent company to the creator for creating said product. In Joe Budden's mind, and honestly, if you listen to the story, in everybody's mind, Joe came up with the Joe Budden podcast. Therefore, Rory and Mal were not creators in the Joe Budden podcast. They were workers, and they were essentially contributing. But their contribution was the chemistry. They came, they showed up, they got paid, and there was a chemistry that was had between friends. Now, if the biggest thing that you bring to the table is the chemistry, then when you do things to disrupt the chemistry, you have become a liability. Joe said this while they were gone, but what job do you know of? If it's not a friend, what job do you know of that you could leave? And the job said, don't worry about it. I know you're disgruntled. I know you're mad. We having an issue. Don't worry about it. You could come back. I'm going to get you these numbers you're asking me for. And fuck that. Rory wanted to audit. How do you audit somebody? Because essentially an audit is like, these papers are fudge. Fuck you. You're lying to me. That's what an audit is, if you don't know what an audit is. An audit is usually, when it's routine, it's usually handled by a third party. When an audit is handled by an employee, that employee is typically not employed anymore. See, the audit is to prove something when you've separated from the company. Rory is essentially just calling Joe a liar. Now, that would be an issue with me. And me personally, I feel like there was a lot to be asked of. If you're saying, as my friend, you owe me some respect, which is what Rory and Mal was saying, then you can't be worried about the business side. Because you can't say when it's convenient for you, hey, I feel like you owe me some respect because I'm your friend. But you're not talking about friendly business. We gonna get it out the mud together and do what we need to do to keep this going. Because see, you guys tried to hold the podcast up for ransom, essentially. Like, we're gonna stop everything by not showing up. And truth be told, if I was Joe or anybody else on the podcast, I would feel personally attacked because you're basically saying, fuck me and how I get paid because you feel a way about something that you shouldn't feel a way about if this is friend business. Now, if this is business, then you guys shouldn't have signed the contracts that you signed. There should have been more of what you wanted, eventually wanted, when the money came in. There should have been more dealing with that before you even signed the contracts. Now, see, I found it very, very interesting that, look, let's be honest. Savon was brought on as a worker. Scream Man was brought on as a worker. Ice and Ish brought on as friends. Rory Mal brought on as friends. Ian brought on as a partner / friend. Who the fuck else? Parks brought on as a friend. Now, this last episode, Joe made it very transparent that his friends as partners did not have contracts. Ian does not have a contract. He can leave when he wants to leave. Parks does not have a contract. He can leave, move around when he wants to move. And it's at his fucking house. Now, their business with Joe Budden is very fluid. It moves. It shifts back and forth. It can because there's no contract. When things are good, they get compensated more. When things are bad, they slow things down and focus on the podcast. Or whatever it is that needs to be having money funneled to it. You guys are employees. Joe promised to pay you a certain amount per your contract. And the contract coming up is just a funny thing to me. And that being said, because according to Joe, you guys can't do another podcast for a year. Now, that sounded strange to me at first because in my mind, I'm saying if you are firing Rory, because I didn't actually hear him fire Mal. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't hear him fire Mal. That's just me. I didn't hear him fire Mal. I heard him fire Rory, though. Fired the shit out of Rory. In your contract, if you are fired, I'm guessing Joe would be enacting a no compete clause, like you can't compete with me if you work for me, right? If he was going to sue you for starting another podcast. But how if you are fired? You didn't willingly quit. You were fired. So that is interesting. I want to know how that contract is set up. Maybe Joe didn't think it all the way through because Joe Budden said you are in breach of your contract, you are fired. If he's already in breach of the contract and the repercussion for that was him being fired, then how can you stop him from doing another podcast? Now, I didn't hear you fire Mal. But maybe my ears are clogged up. You guys let me know. I didn't hear him fire Mal. So that would mean Mal isn't there. And Mal going to do another podcast against the wishes of Joe Budden would just be him violating what would be a no-compete clause. And if you do any type of business where you're a freelancer and you work for somebody and they hire you as an employee, there's no-compete clauses, and like they're just there to keep you from taking business from them, essentially. I do video photography, right? If I'm working for a firm, they're going to put me under a no-compete clause because what they don't want is to be cut out of the pie. I explain it like this. Say I'm working for a company and I'm shooting a video for Ford, but I'm working for an agency that hired me to shoot this video for Ford. Now, I can't go behind their back and get a contract myself with Ford, having worked for them. That right there is a no-compete clause that I would have had signed. And yeah, essentially, it would be brought to me that, hey, you can no longer work for us and work for Ford separately. If it's not something contracted through us, we can sue you. So that's how that works, right? So I wonder how that contract is. But I'm gonna just be keeping y'all guys abreast on what's going on because I'm interested as hell. And like I said, I love the Joe Budden podcast, and these are my guys. I watch them every time it comes on, and like, I'm sorry, I work hard. I don't know what days that shit come on, man. I couldn't take Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturday, Thursday, Tuesday, Saturday, whatever day, man. But help me with my memory and like, subscribe, and ring the bell notification. So yeah, that would help me out a lot. Thanks, guys. But yeah, man, just it's a sad situation to see. And I don't know, man. I'll keep you guys abreast of everything that's going on. But it seems really intricate when it shouldn't be, because if you guys are doing homie business, why are there contracts? And if there are contracts, then that wasn't homie business to begin with. And everybody's got different lawyers. And why are there lawyers if we're doing homie business? And it just doesn't seem like people took things for face value. I don't think Rory and Mal, and it's crazy that we're saying Rory and Mal, like Rory and Mal are a two-piece. Joe actually had a whole friendship with Mal before Rory ever came into the picture at all, as a friend, as a co-worker, as anything. So I get where Joe is saying, like, I've known you for X amount of years and we've lived together and we've been this close, and I never would have thought we would have had a falling out over this guy that I brought into the fold. Woo, sheesh. That's hard, baby. That's hard. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think. I'll be keeping you guys up to date because this is gonna get messier. I promise it's gonna get messier. And yeah, like, subscribe, ring that bell notification so you can be back. I ain't got no eyebrows for the next video. And with that being said, man, as usual, peace. I love you guys.